Hello, and welcome to today's Augustana Human Library session. The title of today's human book is Same but Different, and this is the human book's abstract. Being a parent to adult children is a joy and a balancing act, especially when your child comes out as a transgender person. This story is about our family's loving journey with our daughter. Thank you all for being here today, and welcome, Same but Different.
So my topic is actually, it's not same but different, it's same but different. And how I got that title initially was when Don and I, my husband and I, were in Cambodia a few years ago. I saw people wearing t-shirts saying same on the front, but different on the back. And so when I inquired where that expression came from, one person thought, well, they weren't quite sure, but one person thought it originated from the LGBT community in Thailand. As a parent of a transgender person, I found this title this t-shirt very interesting. Same but different. Because this to me is a statement that reflects us, all of us, and our daughter. It reflects humanity. It talks about us all. As individuals, we are all the same, but different. It is the difference that makes us unique, individualistic, and interesting. It is the difference that is our soul and our essence. And that's what my husband and I really believed in from the very beginning, when our journey just started with one of our children becoming a transgender person. So as myself, I was brought up in Ontario, and I am a baby boomer. So however, being part of the LGBT community was not unfamiliar to me, because I had one cousin who was a first cousin once removed, and she had a female partner, and they lived together, and they raised my three cousins as they did co-parenting, and I would spend a lot of time in the 60s in this household in Toronto. So this to me, it just felt like a normal situation. And I've had a very close male cousin of mine in the 80s in Toronto, was one of the first people. Oops, somebody's mic is on and I can hear some noises above it. What's I going to say? A male cousin in Toronto, and he was one of the first people to die of AIDS, which was very difficult for us all. And then I've had a couple of other cousins who, in their late time of life, have changed their lifestyle and have gotten same-sex partners. So my husband has said to me in the past, you know, if you ever feel like you need to tell me something, just kind of like, could you let me know in advance? And I said, no, it's okay. I'm just fine. So on my husband's side, my husband's background, he is from Edmonton, and he had not any familiarity with the LGBT community until our daughter became a transgender person, and till she transitioned. However, on Dawn's side, interestingly enough, two of his siblings, so our daughter's first cousins, two of the siblings have, two of his siblings' children have transitioned from male to female. So now there are three first cousins who are who have transitioned. So Don and I have been married for, I think it's 43 years, I got to count. And we have 3 children and 3 granddaughters. I'm a retired speech language pathologist, and now spend my time with being a U of A senator, I volunteer with the United Church. I volunteer with Camels Pride. I'm with Rotary, mental health initiatives on Augustana and North Campus, and spend a lot of time being a grandmother, which is a lot of fun. And recently, I've started online training to be a professional coaching designation. So I'm busy, which is great. So the journey started for us as parents when our daughter, she is 30 now, when she was 22 and she was in university at U of A, this phone call came out of the blue and she said, Mom, I think I'm interested in cross-dressing. And so I was sort of puzzled because I'd never really heard of that much or expected her to be interested in that. And so all I could think to say was, oh, how's that working for you? So she said that there was a group of people who were interested in this and she found a community, and so she was carrying on with that. So that it was then that I realized that, you know, your children can change their interests or they can reveal to you. I appreciated her revealing to me that she was interested in this, that she didn't keep it as a secret. However, as she explored more of that, she realized it wasn't cross-dressing, that her preference was to be a female. That, as I say, from the very start, Dawn and I realized that if anybody needed support, I mean, children need support all the time, but if anybody needed support now, she definitely needed support, because we could immediately see that she may be part of a marginalized community, and we could not forsake her in any way or imply any doubt while she was starting this journey. So consequently, because she mentioned this to a physician, she was immediately assigned to a psychiatrist and to an endocrinologist. And the psychiatrist, there are 2 psychiatrists in Edmonton. There used to be only 1, but now, because of the demand, there's 2, and one's at the hospital and one's on the south end of Edmonton. And they are with you during this journey, and as you especially need them for when you start your hormone treatment, as well as if you are a candidate. I just ate one of my sprouts. When you're a candidate for the gender reassignment surgery in Montreal. So at this point, when she was assigned to a psychiatrist and starting her journey, Dawn and I went for counseling, which was really interesting. We tried 2 different counselors. Both of them had not had any familiarity with working with people who had transgender children. One of them, though, I really appreciated. He said, well, you know, I've never done this, but I'm reading up, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd continue with me, because it's a continued learning experience for the both of us. So that's what we did, and it was a lot of the comments that this person made that help us see things more clearly, because as parents, we were very shocked because our child, who had gone from male to female, had never indicated to us that she had this conflicting thoughts. She did say once that, I mean, when we were going through this journey, do you remember, Mom, when you found your clothes in my room? And I said, yes. I vaguely remember that, but you were only 8, 10 years old, and I just thought it was, I didn't think anything of it. So I got to get rid of that sprout I have. She dated females in high school. She was on soccer groups. She went into engineering. So there was no indications that her preference was to be a female. So she did at that time as well change her name. And that was interesting for Dawn and I, because, when a child is born, it's the parents that choose the name for the child, depending on history, family names, even what the child looks like when the child is born, preferences, names that sound good when you say them. She chose a name that I didn't really like, but it wouldn't have been a name I would have chosen for a child who was born. But that's a name she chose for herself. So we asked her, you've chosen your first name, can we help you or be part of the process of choosing your middle name? And she was great with that. So of course I came up with my name. So she's got my name in there, which is great. So her difficulties during that time and it was hard on my husband and I to see this, and she was starting to really have difficulties attending classes to finish up her engineering because she was quite focused on transitioning. She got through 3.5 years. She had to do 1.5 years, but she found that she was getting anxious about the whole transitioning process. And I'll talk about the endocrinology in a minute. I think the hormone change had something to do with that as well. She immediately started losing friends, people of her high school who continued into university with her were quite reticent to do anything with her because they didn't know how to handle it. So they dropped all communication with her. So she really had to find a new community. And we could tell then, and for quite a few years, until mainly recently, she became quite lonely. So to deal with all that she was doing with transitioning and having lost her community of friends and as support was extremely hard on her and hard on us as parents to see that. She did have, though, one of the first cousins that did transition about the same time she is very close to, and they are very close. And so she had her cousin to go through this, and actually they've lived together for quite a few years now. So with family support, actually, I found that quite interesting. My approach to her transitioning was blab it. I don't know whether it was just, I don't know what it was, but or it's my personality, but I figured I didn't want to keep family secrets, because keeping a family secret is implying that there's something wrong with it. So when people would say, and I'd probably work it into the conversation myself, how's your family? I say, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. And our son is transitioning, and she's now has this new name. And it was really interesting, the reaction. Some of them would be like, just nothing. And then others would say, oh, tell me about that. So, and it was interesting because at that time, both our parents were living. My mother is 95 and she's still living, and Dawn's mom was in her late 80s and lived into her 90s, just recently passed away. But both of them had quite interesting reactions for seniors. Dawn's mom said, "Isn't that called trans something? I saw it on TV." Oh, she said, "That's interesting." And my mom was sort of like, she asks regularly, "How's, our daughter doing?" I'm just very careful not to say the name, may slip out. But she's always interested in how she's doing, and there didn't seem to be any discrimination in our family. It was one time when things were not going well for our daughter, I said to my son-in-law, I said, it must be interesting for you to have all this drama going on in our family. And I said, what do you think of it? And he said something really interesting, which I've never really asked him. He said, "Well, my try not to say her name. My sister-in-law is my sister-in-law, and I love her no matter what." So that was really good to hear. And her granddaughters, because Kira's been transitioning for 7 or 8 years now, or has transitioned now, and our oldest granddaughter is 9. There was one time just a couple of years ago when one of the granddaughters, they were all around, they're 9, 7, and 5 now, and they said, "Auntie is coming over." And I said, what? And they said, "Auntie is coming over." And I said, what are you saying? I really couldn't hear what they were saying. And they went, "Granny, the man woman is coming over." So it's they just take it all in as their part of their life, especially when there are 2 other cousins at family reunions as well. They're like, it's just part of life. We saw changes in Kira when she started taking the, I use the name, oh well, when she started using the estrogen, taking the estrogen that was prescribed by the psychiatrist and the endocrinologist. It was really interesting to see the change. It was like she went back to being a teenager, a really young teenager. It was like the frontal lobe had just stopped working, and she was mainly on impulse and not good reasoning or judgment. There were lots of it. It was mainly the impulsivity that we saw, and this sort of was prevalent for about 3 years, that we really had to just make sure that wise choices were made and support her in just re-looking at her choices and taking responsibilities for things which just wasn't her previously. I mean, she was quite a responsible person, but suddenly she was this teenager, young teenager. But we were told that this is all part of the process when you do start from male to female, start with the estrogen. She also was trying to find out where she fit in the human spectrum. She did try at one point being androgynous. No, initially she became very feminine, lots of makeup and more feminine clothes. Then she realized that really wasn't her, how she felt. Then she decided that she would go right in the middle of the line and that she would be more of an androgynous person, but which is really what she is. But she said that she found society either wanted one or another, And it's just too bad we just can't accept people for just who they are. But so she now she's more like slightly over in the female spectrum. Also, she's not quite sure what her preference is for sexuality, whether that is what she is working out about her preferences as well. So another dilemma she had was facial hair. There were two of them for portraying herself as the female. It was a facial hair which required lots of electrolysis, which now I think is completed. It also was a change in voice. Being a retired speech pathologist, I now see that there are speech pathologists who specialize in helping with people with transgender voices. But, and it became too artificial, Kira felt, to change her voice. It also wreaks havoc on your vocal folds if you try to transition your voice and speaking at a fundamental frequency that is not your natural voice. So Kira now speaks in her natural voice, which sometimes is difficult for Dawn and I because it's sort of conflicting messages for her, because that her natural voice is what she was brought up as for 22 years. So oftentimes if we're sitting in the car, she's in the back seat and talking, we also often misgender her or call her her previous name because we're hearing the original person who was there. So from the very beginning, I didn't want to make it a secret. So, or as I said, it implies that there's something wrong with it. So with myself, the changes that occurred with us is I really did figure out who had judgments about this and where those judgments came from. And I think I just have the strength of personality. I just felt that if somebody was judging me or my family with and they didn't agree with transitioning, then oh well. There's things I can help you with your thoughts on that, but if you're not ready yet, I've got a lot of other things to do. And one of the main things is supporting my adult child who's going through this. That's my priority. So in that case, I changed my church community because there is a church, the United Church, who is very much advanced in their affirming and inclusiveness. And I was brought up in that church anyway, so it was quite natural for me to go back and I appreciated their and still have their approach towards inclusiveness. And as somebody said at one church thing, we're all a bunch of misfits anyway. And I thought, that's fine. You know, if that's where we are, then we all just enjoy each other. So at the very beginning of this, they asked at Rotary one time, at the beginning of it, they asked me to do in Rotary as a member a classification talk. In other words, that's like who you are and what you've done, where you've worked. So my classification talk at that time was about how our family was helping our daughter transition as a transgender person, and the support she needed being a part of a marginalized community. And again, I didn't really, I saw it as a learning experience for all of us. And I had after that, it was quite interesting, quite profound, actually. I had 3 people come up to me on the street and say, after you gave the talk, I now realize that I had prejudices, and I now realize that people need to be who they need to be. And it's really enlightened me and my perspective. But one of the people who came to me and said that said, I know of a situation right now where there is a transgender person who is being forsaken by the family, taken out of the will. Is there any way that I can lead the family to information about what this is all about? And I said, well, actually, there isn't anything in Camrose. So thinking about that, I got together our United Church minister at the time. Liz was part of the LGBT community, and I asked her if she would help me gather all the services within Camrose, all the psychological services, support services, youth services, police services, any service, Augustana, anything, youth services, high school, who would be interested in a meeting about what we were doing in Camrose, Camrose Association for Community Living, family services, a meeting about what we were doing for the LGBT community. And interestingly enough, a few years ago, maybe 7, 6, there were 45 people from different agencies who attended that meeting. It was, and from that came the Camrose Pride Society. So, which is doing really well. It's a really strong community now. And from that, I was interested in more the people of the LGBT community being on the executive. I didn't want to be on the executive. It's more like their show, but I'm part of the family and friends support. So we are a group of parents who meet once a month and support each other. So if you know of anybody who would like to join us, we'd love to have new members. So this, Nancy, you tell me how much time I have. So the whole mantra about, well, you've lost a son and gained a daughter, that really didn't ring true for us, because it just sounded a little trite, because our child is our child is our child. It's, we just, and she has transitioned, but she is still our child, and she's still the same person. What we were concerned about, though, was her future. The isolation, the proclaimed poverty. Transgender people are the most marginalized and poor people. The discrimination and her safety. Those were the things, and isolation and the loneliness. So that were the main things that were in the back of our mind, and are, but maybe not quite so much now. So one of the main catalysts for her and her transitioning was when she became eligible to have gender reassignment surgery in Montreal, and Alberta government pays. It's a private clinic in Montreal. People come from all over the world to have this done. For each client, it costs $20,000, which each provinces in Canada pay for that. They pay for the client's flight out and back. They pay for one night at a bed and breakfast that is assigned to the place in Montreal. That's just for Canadians. The people we met there were from the States, Africa, Europe, Thailand, because why this is so renowned and so has such a good reputation, the place in Montreal, is that you have your surgery and then you have 1 week in a unit right next to the hospital. It's a small hospital, more like a doctor's clinic. You have 1 week of convalescing care by registered nurses, nurses assistants, and the surgeon comes around daily, if not twice a day, to check on how you're doing. And there's usually, the surgery is Mondays. They do people transitioning from male to female. And on Wednesdays, they have people transitioning from female to male. And so then you're all living in the house. You develop a real sense of camaraderie. The food for them were amazing because they have their own chef. And but the care and the concern for everybody, and that's why this clinic has international reputation. The people from the States told me that they're in one day, they pay $15,000 to $20,000 for each separate anesthesiologist, a surgeon, the nurse, $15,000 to $20,000. That's for one day, and then they're kicked out and they're told to go home. Our daughter had some surgical complications after the surgery, so we were glad we were there. And the doctor came regularly to help with the situation. So it's just it's an amazing clinic, and it's very proudly Canadian. But that, when she had her surgery, you know, somebody goes through major surgery, you think they come out of the operating room like, ugh. But Kara came out of the operating room. She sat right up and she just whooped and said, I'm who I want to be. And the nurses said to her, and the doctors said to them, when they took her out, and they say to each client, you know, we've helped you now be who you want to be. Congratulations. It's just so supportive. And there, you know, there have been, she required 1 month of convalescing care here in Camrose, and a couple of times I had to take her to emergency because she did have just a few minor complications. But I found the physicians like really interested, like, really? Oh, tell me more. So it was quite an enlightening experience for them as well. So I just want to say here that changes we noticed during that transition, let me just note here, her sense of humor and her personality and her empathy for other people, which were characteristic of hers before she went on the estrogen, now we see all that coming back. And so it's been 7 years. Her connecting with, she's made a whole new group of friends that are mainly with roller derby and other areas that she's connected with. She has really meaningful employment that value her as what she can offer her at the job, and also what she as her as a person. She's in the organic, she's with an organic grocery store as a manager, and they are busy. So fortunately, she's not going to be one of the misfortunate people that will lose their jobs with this COVID, because the demand for, she's in the food industry, the demand for food. We are really getting used to the gender pronoun transition. I mean, we hardly mess up at all. So but just on rare occasions, which makes us feel that we really have, you know, are in our soul accepting us as daughters, as her as a daughter. So we're very proud of her, of what she's done, and we are very proud of her confidence in herself. So that's the end of my story. We started going to PFLAG, which is the Parent Family something support group. I forget what it stands for, but it runs up at, it did run at that time at U of A. Before we had our family and friends support group down here, and that was just so excellent. It was so well run. It was run by a social worker, and other families from Camrose went up. I think it was once a week. But, it was well done, and it still is going on.
So PFLAG group specifically at the U of A?
Yes, but I think I've heard that they're more independent now. But there is, I'm not quite sure, but there is now, it's not part of the, they don't just have one LGBT group, but they have people who have family members who are transgender, and people who have family members of the LGB.
Great, yeah. I will note for you here, Peggy Sue from the libraries has put this into the chat. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Chris. I particularly appreciated the effect that your words had on the Rotary Club members, and I was very touched and grateful that you have stepped up in the way you have to be so open and change people's perspectives, or sorry, perceptions.
Thank you, Peggy Sue.
Very nice.
Thank you. Yeah.
Anybody? Well, Sarah is saying, do you think that the timing of your daughter's transition had an effect on the way you felt about it? If she was younger, would it have been more difficult?
You know what? I think if she was younger, yes, I think it would have been more difficult, because when she was transitioning about 7 or 8 years ago, it was just starting. You just started to hear about people transitioning. And so I had some knowledge of it. If she, because she's 30 now, if she had done it in high school or even younger, it would have been a very sad situation, because I think there wouldn't have been any support or understanding or empathy for it, especially in high school or in public school. And I think she may have known that, and that's why she waited for later, until later. That's a good point. I never thought of that.
Thank you very much for attending, the readers, and thank you again for being a human book for us. It's always wonderful to hear your story.